Hello and welcome to No Man's Podcast, that Batman bullshit you love. I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
And I'm the Riddler.
Oh man, I can't wait to collect all your green bullshit trophies to get a cutscene.
I played Arkham Asylum once.
Yeah, and I got all those, and then they said, here's 270 of them. And I went, no.
No.
And then an Arkham Knight came out, and they said, here's 300. And I went, no.
300? When are you going to... Who's got the time for that, man?
No one has the time for that, and you can't get 100% completion without getting all of them. So it's pointless. Also, all you do is fight him in a robot suit, and you take him down in 2 hits. We have one viewer. What are you doing on a Tuesday night?
Watching us. Thank you for watching.
Loneliness is a curse, is it not?
I'll drink to that.
Yep. All right. We kind of have a grab bag of issues this week, where we have JLA number 32, Batman Legends of the Dark Knight number 121, and the Batman Harley Quinn one-shot, which introduces Harley Quinn into the mainline DC universe. At least in this iteration, because it gets fucked over about 4 more times after this. All right,
yeah,
Matt.
Harley Quinn's kind of a mess, isn't she?
Yep, and we'll get into that later in the show. So, Matt, tell us about a good comic book.
All right,
JLA number 32.
Let's talk about Justice League of America 32 by Mark Waid with pencils by David Grayson. No, he wrote it. But, fuck.
Also, that's Devin Grayson, and that's a her.
Written by Mark Waid and Devin Grayson with pencils by Mark Pagerino. I don't know Mark Pagerino, but I'm kind of cool with his art. I think it looks pretty good throughout the issue. This story starts with Superman floating in space, and he's got some like ice crystals growing on him, and he's talking to Huntress because Huntress is in no man's land in Gotham City, and she's like, "Why are the Justice League not here helping?"
Well, she's part of the Justice League at this point too.
Yeah, she's part of the league, and I think she has a good point. Kind of this issue wants to address why the Justice League isn't helping with No Man's Land. Superman makes a comment about not being allowed to. I'm assuming that was addressed in a different episode that I wasn't on, because I don't know what he means by that.
It was kind of addressed when Superman showed up in whatever book it was, but it was like Superman had 24 hours to figure out how he would save Gotham, and he realized even if him being there wasn't going to work. So Batman kind of was like, yeah, I'm going to take care of this. You guys kind of stay away, and it's my problem.
Yeah, which I kind of think is bullshit, but
go back and read that issue, and it kind of makes a case for it.
Okay. I think what they were literally referring to was how the government's just straight up outlawed anyone from going into Gotham, like declaring it a no man's land. No one's allowed in or out. I think that's what they were referring to. Like the Justice League has to abide by that law too, I suppose. So.
That might be right. Anyway, Superman's like, "You're shit out of luck, Huntress. We're not gonna go help you. Have fun." Meanwhile, Green Lantern and Orion are fighting some big yellow birds, and this is Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, and his ring I think works on yellow. Obviously works on yellow stuff because he's using it to crush these birdies. And Orion gets pretty wrecked, and then he gets infected with the techno-organic virus from the Marvel universe. And the techno-organic virus starts turning him into a machine. So they take him to the Watchtower, where everyone's favorite Watchtower watchman, John Jones, Martian Manhunter, is like, "Oh, this is Locust." Everyone knows Locust from that one story that they were in.
Well, they cure one here, which Mark Waid wrote.
I assumed it was a Mark Waid story. Yeah. So they cure Orion, and Martian Manhunter goes to the Senate to investigate if Locust is behind the entirety of No Man's Land. And there's this really cool sequence where he is doing like a surface level telepathic scan on everyone in the room, and then he gets attacked. I think it's a really cool page because it's the only real Martian Manhunter page in this issue, and I love my Martian Manhunter. That's really cool. Superman talks to Huntress a little bit more. Aquaman fights a big old fish. I actually don't know why he fights that fish. I don't know what the point of that was. But it's in the issue.
I think the point of it was that the locusts were trying to take over the animal life surrounding the Gotham Harbor.
That would make sense. It doesn't explicitly say that, but I think that must be what it is. And then Superman picks up on what he's been doing the entire time, floating around in space. He's been listening for a certain sequence that the machines that Locust use gives off, and he finally hears it. And I think this page is super cool, where Superman's coated in ice because he's been just floating in space in one spot for so long that ice formed all over his body. And then he bursts out of his ice shell and flies down to Earth. These 3 panels here. It looks awesome. So they go down, they find this big old machine, and it's giving off red sun radiation. So Superman's down for the count. He's got one woman. He's got Flash with him, Beth Flash, the boy Wally West, and Barda. And while they're doing this, Huntress is also helping this kid because like a gang is trying to beat him up or whatever. As I'm talking about it, I realize there is so much that happens in this issue. This is a really dense issue. Like, comics today aren't written like this, you know?
They're not, but I will say that there's been moments in these stories where not a lot happens, and I've breezed through issues in this show in like 10 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, for sure. But this Justice League issue, I think, is really good.
It's like Mark Waid's good at what he does or something. I don't know.
It's almost like Mark Waid is one of the best writers in comics. Flash takes down the Red Sun machine, and he ends up getting the techno-organic virus himself. And because of his fast metabolism, it starts taking over his body even faster. But he managed to take down the Red Sun machine, so now Superman's back up, and he and Barda can do some real good smashing and beat everything. And Wonder Woman is also here. She wraps up the Flash in some metal. I think that's really pretty much all she does in this specific issue. Superman interrogates one of the Locust guys, and there's a really cool moment where he's being taken over by the techno-organic virus, and in the middle of his speech, it shifts from the normal font to a more mechanical font as it gets taken over, which I think is super neat. Just like, you don't talk about lettering in comics very often because it's lettering. But
well, if you don't talk about lettering, that means they did a good job.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Because the only time we ever talked about lettering in Clone Saga was when it was fucking awful.
And it was awful very kind of often because they were still trying to figure out how to do digital lettering.
But this moment where it shifts from the normal font to a more techno font, for lack of a better word, I think is really cool. And then Huntress saves the boy, and he realizes that they do have the JLA in Gotham. It's her. She's the JLA. And I have to assume is Batman not on the league at this point?
He is and he isn't. I think they were doing a thing where Batman wasn't on the league full time because this was going on.
Is this after Tower of Babel? Because that's something to do with it.
This roped up to let you know what's going on. Morrison's still in his run at this point. Okay. Mark Waid and Devin Grayson were guest writers for this.
Oh, was it in the middle of the Morrison run?
Yeah. So like multiple times, there were multiple times where like Mark Waid would come in and write an issue like on a fill-in while like Morrison was like had his hand in 5 different things. But this issue comes right off the heels of the end of Crisis Times 5.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. Because like I mean, we'll get into it more throughout this episode. I think this was the strongest issue we read for tonight. And I mean, I've heard Morrison's JLA. It's Morrison. It's amazing. And if the fill-in, if the fill-in issue is this good, then like I've got to read this stuff, don't I?
Well, Mark Waid would go on to have a run on JLA, like immediately following Morrison.
Right, because he did Tower of Babel, right?
Yep. Well, that wasn't his first story, but yeah. And then like he had like mini arcs in Morrison's run, and then after that, Joe Kelly would come on, and then the book would eventually. I think then it goes to after Joe Kelly. I can't remember if it's Byrne and Claremont and then it's like Chuck Austin. And if Vince is watching, he'll be like, "No, I'm forgetting someone." And then eventually it goes to, I think Jeff Johns ends it with Crisis of Conscience right before Infinite Crisis.
Byrne and Claremont?
Yep, they tried to recapture magic on that, and it didn't work. And then Chuck Austin came on. They tried to do stuff that didn't work.
Well, Chuck Austin's trash. I didn't know that Byrne and Claremont reunited at all, but let alone on Justice League. That's
and it's not. You don't hear about it because it wasn't good.
Yeah, probably. Damn it. Okay, that's really upsetting.
Yeah, but if you look at the whole history of the JLA title, though, it's pretty strong, all things considered. Especially starting off with Morrison, and then Howard Porter on art with John Dell on inks. So, and then it's still, I think, and then I believe Wade's first arc is Heaven's Ladder, which had Brian Hitch on art.
Okay.
So, that might have been its own miniseries because it was like an oversized, like huge, super huge book. It was like kind of huge and horizontal. So
interesting. Yeah. That's awesome. So, what do you guys think of Justice League of America number 32?
It's good. It's strong. It's kind of hard to tack on because there's nothing else that I would have heard. I wanted to really add. It does feel like a standard issue of JLA, but JLA was a strong book, so
I think it was really nice to see Superman, Martian Manhunter, and the Flash, especially, just because those are characters that I really like. But honestly, it was nice to see Green Lantern as well, and Orion and Big Barda. Even though I don't particularly care about those characters as much, it was just nice to get outside the Bat family for a little bit.
Which is why I think we liked that Young Justice issue we read a couple episodes ago too.
Yeah, exactly. You got anything, Mr. Nigma?
No, I thought it was a very good issue. Yeah, I think I'm appreciating it more kind of looking back on it now. It was kind of funny, just like it definitely did feel like, an issue from a different book that I haven't been reading because that's what it is. So it was, yeah, it was definitely fun. A lot of good action sequences. The Martian Manhunter stuff was cool. Yeah.
And I think most significantly, it's really well written. Unlike Legends of the Dark Knight number 121, which I think we're going to get into next.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. If you guys been hearing any, is my end sounding okay, or?
It's livable.
Yeah, go ahead. Take it.
Okay. Next up is Legends of the Dark Knight number 121. This one, it's written by Larry Hama, penciled by Rick Burchett, and it's got a really beautiful Glenn Orbeck cover, just like all the Glenn Orbeck Legends covers that have shown up in this story. It's an action shot of Mr. Freeze freezing Batman, and Batman's face is frozen in a horrified expression. And it's just quite cool. Because cool. Okay. The issue's called Power Play. And the issue's called Power Play. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first appearance. Is this the first appearance of Nora Freeze in the comics universe and the first appearance of the animated series influenced version of Mr. Freeze?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I tried to research it briefly. I think there was a Paul Dini one-shot a year or two before, but I think in like the description Vince provided, it said like Mr. Freeze is changed to match the animated version. So I don't know. This is definitely an early issue of that status quo, I think. But anyway, the issue starts out. I'm sorry, do you guys still have a JLA32 on the screen, or is that just my computer?
Probably just your computer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Have you on the screen.
Slight technical difficulties, but nothing we can't get past. Okay, okay, we start out, there's a bunch of goons frozen in Chinatown, and Batman's investigating, and he's like, well, the only one who could have done this is Mr. Freeze. Well, maybe Captain Cold, but he doesn't live in Gotham. They don't mention Captain Cold, but and he gets in a fight and oh no, he looks at their clothing, and they're not the ones who are supposed to be in this territory, the ones who run this territory. Some of the members of the gang who do run it come out and challenge him to a fight. And okay, this is the beginning of the first obviously off thing about this issue to me is Batman is way too chatty in this fight, and in every fight sequence here, or just overall throughout the issue, Batman is way too chatty, way too quippy, like he's trying to be Spider-Man or something. Like, at least this particular era, from what everything else I've been reading, Batman's usually much more quiet when he fights. But anyway, after some one-liners, he learns that Mr. Freeze is currently in Chinatown, still running the power plant we saw him in last, except now it is up and running again. He's running it. But he's not in the power plant. He's in the giant ice castle he's built for himself next to it. And yeah, it's a literal castle, quite intricate looking. And we see that Freeze has been running this furniture racket, but he's just burning the furniture to keep the power plant running. And he's basically, yeah, he's like overcharging people for the power, only giving it to who he wants to give it to. Most of Gotham's completely out of power. Batman sneaks into Freeze's hideout by hiding in the cabinet, and he makes a quip about how the goons never read the Iliad, but actually, the Trojan horse story does not appear in the Iliad. The Iliad only covers a specific episode of events of the Trojan War. It ends well before the Trojan horse story. Small detail, but
there are like 3 or 4 different literary references in this issue that feel extremely out of place.
Oh my god! Tom King wrote this.
Sorry, what?
I said, "Oh my god!" It's like Tom King wrote this issue.
Yeah.
Come on, Batman, you gotta know your ancient literature better than that. Anyway, so we get back to Freeze. No, not back to. We see Mr. Freeze for the first time in this issue, and he's brooding in his ice castle, monologuing about chaos and anarchy, which, yeah, I've always really liked Mr. Freeze, and this issue was overall kind of a disappointing portrayal of him for me. Like, it didn't help that a lot of his dialogue I could very easily hear in my head in an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. But yeah, he's monologuing about anarchy and whatever, and how he's plunging the city into anarchy by doling out power as he sees fit, and he's like chiding that, oh, they just want to watch mindless soap operas. It's kind of funny they're even watching soap operas anymore in No Man's Land when they get the power, but I guess anything to distract from the situation they're in. And he says, like, oh, okay, I'm creating chaos because Batman loves Gotham, and I want revenge on Batman by ruining the thing he loves, just like I blame him for what happened to Nora, which, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch. You'd think he could get revenge on Batman in a more straightforward way than just plunging the city into anarchy, but... So yeah, then we do a brief flashback where we see Mr. Freeze in the costume he wore in the animated series, designed by Mike Mignola, which is a much better costume than the one he's still wearing in this story, which is definitely some Schumacher vibes. And we find that in this continuity, his wife was terminally ill. He had her frozen to work on a cure, just like in the animated series. But when he was fighting Batman, he accidentally blasted her and shattered her with his freeze gun, and he blames it completely on Batman, even though it was his blast. And yeah, if this is one of the first introductions of the Nora backstory to the canon, I don't really care for how she's just dead right from the get-go. Like, I think it's a little more interesting to for him to be motivated by trying to cure her for a while at least. But, I mean, it probably made sense to them at the time as a way to retroactively introduce that origin. And I think they bring her back sooner or later through some weirdness, even though she got shattered. But anyway, Batman comes in and he's like, hey, Mr. Freeze, you kind of killed your wife, right? And Mr. Freeze is like, no, I want revenge. And they're fighting and they exchange lots of quips in this fight, much less cleverly quipped than usual Spider-Man fight than a Batman fight. And meanwhile, Batman has rigged the factory to blow up because, or the power plant. And that I thought was kind of dumb too. Like, I don't understand why he doesn't just keep the power plant running and get it out from Mr. Freeze's control. The Gotham could probably use a little bit of electricity, but whatever. No, just blows it up, and that melts the ice castle. And they keep fighting. There's some kind of fun stuff in this fight, except the one part's kind of fun at the time, but it's also a little silly. Like, he knocks Mr. Freeze's gun off the castle, and Mr. Freeze, jumps after it, catches it, and, makes himself an ice slide to catch himself. I don't think it makes too much sense with the physics. It's at least a little entertaining, I don't know.
Well, the panel layout in that sequence is really strong. I think that the art throughout this issue is amazing, but I like that page a lot.
Yeah, the art, it's not generally a style I'm a huge fan of, but looking at it again especially, it is really well done. I did like a lot, actually, even though I don't care for this Mr. Freeze costume, I think we get a lot of close-ups of Mr. Freeze's face, and I think his face is really well done with the shadows kind of highlighting his features since he's just white like the background, but the artist uses shadows to show the expression on his face and so forth, and I think showing a lot of close-ups is definitely an advantage when his costume's kind of ugly like this. But yeah, so eventually Batman wins, except Mr. Freeze is just stranded on a chunk of ice floating away, and Batman for some reason compares him to Prometheus in a reference that's definitely a bit of a stretch, I think. And then Mr. Freeze seems to notice that, oh, I'm floating away on ice just like Frankenstein's monster in the end of the book. So he says, I'm a modern Prometheus, because the subtitle Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus, but unlike Mary Shelley's creation, I shall return. And Batman's just like, and I'll be waiting. So, yeah, really weak issue story and dialogue-wise, I thought. Definitely.
Yeah, the dialogue is trash. The dialogue is really bad throughout, but I love the art. I kind of, flipping through it now, imagine a sort of alternate universe where this story has no dialogue. I think that would be so much stronger, because the art is really good, and for the most part, the art tells a story on its own. If you take the dialogue out, it's just as coherent, because ultimately it's a Batman fighting Mr. Freeze issue. So
Yeah,
I think this would be a much stronger story without the dialogue at all.
that's a really good observation. I definitely see that. The art definitely like it doesn't jump forward a lot. You pretty much see all the action straight through, and it's pretty straightforward action. So
Mm-hmm.
this definitely would have been stronger and more interesting if there's no dialogue.
I honestly, I love the art. I think it's very cartoony, I suppose, but I just think it's beautiful in its simplicity.
Well, here's the thing. This is drawn by Rick Burchett, who is first got his notoriety, I believe, as an inker, but he was also a interior pencilist on the Batman Adventures comics. So that's why it looks like that.
Yeah, it kind of looks like DCAU with more comic booky style.
Rick Burchett would then go on to do the Detective Comics run with Greg Rucka during the New Gotham era, immediately following the end of No Man's Land, and he would also draw the Batman Huntress Cry for Blood miniseries, and then also do the Batman 10-Cent Adventure, which kicked off the Bruce Wayne fugitive storyline. Or no, Bruce Wayne murder and then fugitive storyline.
I wonder if he's ever drawn Spider-Man, because I think Spider-Man would look really cool in his style.
If you're the closest thing you can might be get to that, other than like he sketches at cons, Bruce Timm has drawn Spider-Man if you want to look at it.
I definitely do, yeah.
So yeah, just type that. I mean, it's not the same artist, but still, if you're looking for that kind of in that wheelhouse style of this, Larry Hama is known for his very prolific run at Marvel with Wolverine and with G.I. Joe. He's I think he's an older writer, so you're going to get wordier books. And he would later go on right before Judd Winnick's run on Batman for Under the Red Hood. He would have a 4-issue run that was never collected with Orca. I think that's right off the top of my head. I don't like Larry Hama here. I think Batman's way too jokey. We've talked about that. And the literary references don't work because, number one, as Mr. Colley pointed out, they're wrong. And two, it doesn't feel like it works in the issue and just kind of runs the flow. It's just like the device used before it doesn't matter at all. This issue exists fully for Rick Burchett's art, and that's it.
Yep, exactly.
We got nothing else to say. We'll go into the real reason why you're here.
That's right.
Batman Harley Quinn. So we left off the last episode talking that this cover is by Alex Ross, and it's the classic Joker in the tux holding Harley shot that they did in that Suicide Squad movie. And the art inside here is by Yvel Guiche, and then written by Paul Dini. So that was the first thing that surprised me, that Paul Dini came in and wrote this.
Yeah. That surprised me as well. And I mean, it makes sense, right? But
It makes sense.
I didn't expect it.
He's her co-creator, but here's the thing. This issue recaps her origin, but it is not the same origin that's told in Mad Love. Some things are very slightly changed around. It's more implied here that Harley just loves the Joker, and that the Joker didn't kind of work like just kind of brainwash her. It's implied that this is all kind of Harley's doing this time around.
Now, I don't think I've seen Mad Love. If I have, I don't remember it. And I thought this was how it was. I didn't think the Joker ever cared for her.
Okay, so here we go. The Joker never cared for her. He just brainwashed her because he was just going to use her.
Right.
So Mad Love implies that he brainwashes her. This time, not so much. It's that Harley loves her and the Joker was just kind of there. And he doesn't care about her, but he just went along with it.
Okay.
So Mad Love is written in a one-shot in 1994 and then not adapted until the new Batman Adventures in 97.
Okay.
So
right.
This is previously written. I just wanted to look at the dates on this. So then this obviously follows now. So just kind of odd that like not too long after we wrote the origin, Paul Dini's already twisting it and messing with it. And then he would later come back and do it again in the Batman animated show where they brought Harley in there. They brought him to write that, and they made more changes to it. So Paul Dini's done her origin 3 separate times, which I find funny.
And he did differently 3 separate times.
Yes.
That's weird. Okay.
The opening of this is Poison Ivy riding on a chariot, making her deliveries. So right after we saw her in the last arc. Also, she has a horse that's like made out of plants.
I love it. It's so cool.
Really cool. And she finds Harley in all of this rubble, dusts her off, picks her up, and then takes her back to her place to basically to heal her because she's all messed up. And Harley then explains what happened. So that's where we get her origin. I'm not going to redo it because we already discussed what the changes were.
Mm-hmm.
And then going forth with it, it's Harley says that she wants to get revenge on the Joker and Batman, and Poison Ivy's like, well, all right, I'm along for the ride with this. But we are shown a mob meeting between the Joker and the Penguin, and that's where Harley made her first appearance here, helping the Joker beat over the Penguin.
I actually want to ask you a question about the origin.
Okay.
Because in this version, she is locked up in Arkham, and then she escapes because of the earthquake, because of the No Man's Land earthquake. How did it happen in Mad Love? Because I'm assuming there was no No Man's Land earthquake.
Right, because there's no Man's Land, because this is their way of bringing her in was for No Man's Land.
Right.
It kind of works. So in Mad Love, because the Joker basically just uses her, she falls in love with the Joker, and she lets the Joker escape by going and getting her costume and then busting him out of Arkham that way.
Okay. So she was never locked up herself?
No.
Got it.
Well, not until Batman put her there. But
right, yeah.
So the exchange between Harley, Joker, and Penguin I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. Harley's pretty much just fully formed from the moment that she's in the costume. She dresses up the Joker's new funhouse because the Joker's always going to have a funhouse. This time it's on the pier. But the Joker doesn't really even he struggles to remember who she is. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are. Oh, I guess you can hang out with us." And then what he does to get rid of her is he puts her in a rocket and implies that it's just blasting her off to kill her.
Yeah.
And then Harley's able to re-steer the rocket, and it crashed, and that's where Harley found her. And she also before that, she helped Joker again by luring Batman into a trap and hitting him over the head with a giant hammer. So she's got the giant hammer. She's doing everything. Though when she's hanging out with Ivy, because she's like, well, you're going to be hanging out with me for a while. I'm poison. I'm literal poison. So you're going to have to drink these drugs to make sure you don't die from hanging out with me, which it's there that she gets her agility and gymnastics. She gets a little bit of a strength buff, which I've never seen that before in the origin. It's always been back to Ben Love again. She has her all that because she was a gymnast through high school and college.
Okay. But in this case, she gets a little buff from
Poison Ivy.
From her future girlfriend,
her future girlfriend.
You know what? Yeah, I'll ask about that now. Is that a New 52 thing? Was that before the New 52?
It was before the New 52.
Was it? Okay.
I think it was years ago. This started back from the Harley and Ivy episode. And then Dini always implied that they slept together. He gave it in some interview, and that's kind of all right, they rolled with it ever since then.
So this has been okay. For whatever reason, I thought that came along later, but it's basically been part of her character from more or less the beginning.
Yeah, since the 90s, it's been there.
That's awesome. Okay, that's really cool.
And it's just over time, with the more writers get on, or we keep trying to move her away from the Joker. So it's not until really Heroes in Crisis. I think Heroes in Crisis was basically coming out and saying, no, she's with Ivy full time now. Okay. Even Deceased did that too, which just came out, where they're fully together in that. So
really,
and more weird. Recent time, the more it's Harley and Ivy is much more of a thing, which I'm down with, because her being with the Joker never really makes sense if the Joker's always going to fuck her over and try to kill her. So
well, and I think also putting her with Ivy and removing her from the Joker makes her seem less like a female Joker, like a sexy Joker character, which
Oh yeah,
is kind of what I've always seen her as someone who is this the first. This might be the first book I've ever read with Harley Quinn in it.
yeah.
Yeah,
well, the
I
other
think it
thing,
is.
too, is she shows up in the books, and then immediately they split her up from Joker.
Yeah,
That's what they do. Number two is then like no one knows how to use her or wants to use her, so she's not used a lot. She's used sparingly. I think one of her big, she eventually gets a series with Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connor, and then Amanda Connor and the New 52 would just have the series.
yeah,
So she's had solo titles, so she's been popular. It's not until I think the Harley maximum popularity comes in the New 52. That's where marketing strategies has kind of placed her. I know Vince says this as the rotating fourth pillar always changes for DC. Sometimes it's Green Lantern. When Johns was writing Green Lantern, it was Green Lantern. You can make an argument it was Flash in the time of Wade and Johns.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of been she's kind of I think maybe stayed the longest in this fourth pillar since she's consistently having more than one book out on the stands.
Yeah,
And her on the Suicide Squad gives credo to the Suicide Squad having more like mattering in the universe, because that was the big thing for her, is that Harley was on the Suicide Squad in the New 52 and she had a solo book.
right.
But that's when the look magically there's different like sections of Harley fans. I'm in the one camp where I want her away from Joker, but wish that she wasn't in the costume she is now, because the costume she had was a really classic look, and I don't like the skimpier and skimpier Harley costumes. That kind of started with the Arkham Asylum game, and
Yeah,
I'm replaying through Arkham Knight now, and like that, there's with each game we got more and more cleavage. To the point where it was like eye rolling.
yeah.
Where I think we only saw her in the original costume in the game in a Batgirl DLC.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah. Pulling stuff out. Back to this issue. Like I said, I feel like when we talk about this is going to be much more of a Harley oversight along with this than just talking about the issue.
Well,
my favorite,
especially because, like, I know basically, if it hasn't been clear yet, I know basically nothing about Harley Quinn. Like, she's Lady Joker, she has hyenas sometimes, and sometimes she, like, hooks with Poison Ivy. That's what I know. So,
yeah. Well,
anyway,
I also
go ahead.
prefer Ivy, because you get to that point with Gotham City Sirens where they're not really bad guys; they're just kind of allies of Batman sometimes, and they'll do their own thing.
And that's kind of cool. I like that.
I'm going to bring up Tom Taylor again, because he wrote Deceased, but he also wrote those Injustice books that sold like hotcakes.
Yeah.
And in the Injustice universe, Harley Quinn's a straight up ally of Batman.
Yeah, she is. Interesting.
So there you go. Like, so it is. She's gotten more popular. I think people have gotten more and more to the point where she's not really a bad guy, which I've always kind of said she was brainwashed and manipulated. She was never really bad per se, at least the way I like to view it.
That's what it seems like to me.
So back to this issue, I like the part where the Joker's hatching this revenge plan. But we cut back to the Joker in the funhouse with this gang, and he's talking about life and relationships with this guy named Ron, and then he just shoots Ron, and he's still talking to him like they're having the conversation. That was good Joker writing.
That's really good. I like that a lot.
And hey, Joker knows how to write the Joker. But
that's better Jokering than anything in the Joker movie.
There was one good Joker. There was two good Joker scenes in that movie.
Sure. You know what? It's not about that movie.
No,
I'm sorry I brought that up.
About that movie. But she ends up making a makeshift bat signal, and that's how she gets the help of Batman, where Batman gives her a tracer, and she's like, hey, if you double cross me, I'm going to get you later. But all right, let's go take down Joker. You don't interfere. That way I know you're not going to double cross me. But immediately she runs in and tries to fight the Joker. Batman steps in. She manages to hit Batman over the head with a mallet again, while Batman's trying to subdue Joker. So they get away, and then Harley takes down Joker, but then she falls for him again, and then she throws him off. There's a thing where it looks like she's going to kill him, but she throws him off a giant tower there, but they both land on a giant balloon, so they're fine. And then they're just riding away on the tunnel of love, and she writes a letter to the Joker. So she writes a letter back to Batman, and by the way, the whole place explodes. And we go back to one of the Batman's makeshift bat caves, which is under Arkham Asylum. And Batman's getting patched up, and he's like, all right, good people still clinging to its ruins, but this having this clown chick here is going to be a much more headache to deal with. I did like to see that the Joker made reference to the time he tangled with Azrael when we talked about that. So
yeah,
Paul Dini, who's not writing mainstream DC books at this time, is clearly still paying attention to what happens, because him and Bruce Timm, Eric Radomski, they were all comic fans and were still picking up books at this time, so they must have been aware of what was going on.
That's amazing. Like you said, Dini's not writing comics, but he is still using recent continuity. Why can't comic book writers do that? What the fuck, Bendis? Fuck you, Bendis. I'm so mad about John. Oh my god.
Well, I also think the thing with Dini is that Dini is just a very damn good Batman writer. He would he would go on to have a run of Detective Comics. He'd write Batman Streets of Gotham. He'd have a run on Zatanna, which is his favorite character. He married his wife, who is a magician, who also looks like Zatanna.
That's so cool.
It's hilarious. Dini, and then also he wrote the first 2 Arkham games. He wrote Mask the Phantasm. Well, co-wrote Mask the Phantasm. If you're a Batman fan, you know Paul Dini's accolades. I just would wish that DC would recollect his Detective Comics run.
Yeah.
Because it's not collected.
I didn't know he had a Detective Comics run. That's possible.
Yeah, it was kind of an old school format with almost every issue being a one-off.
I like that.
There's a Christmas issue where Robin is kidnapped by a guy driving a van, and it's the Joker, and Robin has to sit there strapped into the Joker's fun van as he's just running over bystanders on Christmas.
Shit.
Yeah, it's really, really dark and twisted, but somehow, because it's well written, it makes you laugh and then also makes you hate yourself for doing that.
Which I've heard and I agree with.
That's the thing Rucka said about writing the Joker.
Thank you.
Is that Rucka has always said, if you write a good Joker, he should make you laugh, and then you should immediately hate yourself for laughing at the thing he just did.
Yep.
So I've always kind of taken that mantra when reading Joker stories. So with that, I think this is very well written. I think some of the changes were a little odd, but it's odd because you can't just. I'm guessing it's because we couldn't just straight up adapt Mad Love because we're in no man's land. So you have to change some things around. But as time went on, less and less of this version happened, and we pretty much just adopted the Mad Love version until we get to the New 52, where Joker throws her in a vat of chemicals and bleaches her skin white just like the Joker, and I hate it. So I'll open the floodgates here. I think it's good. It's the best issue, I think, of this episode. So
I think it's my favorite issue is still the Justice League one, just because I have more of a connection with those characters. But this is probably technically the best issue we read for this episode. The ending, I think, is really sad. I don't know if it was supposed to be sad, but you know what? I'm gonna say it was, because Dini's a smart writer. Just the fact that Joker was like, what if I say I'm sorry? And Harley Quinn immediately forgives him for everything and goes back to him, and that's so sad.
It's the same ending of Mad Love, though, in a different way, because the ending of Mad Love is the ending of Mad Love is Joker throws her out of a building window, and she falls down into trash cans. And as she's all patched up and Batman brings Joker back to Arkham, you already see that Joker wrote her a sorry letter, and it made it her way into her cell, and then she's already fallen for him again. That's
so sad. It really is. I don't know. This is my first issue where I read about Harley Quinn, and I don't know if I'm entirely sold on her yet, but I'm more interested than I have been before. This was a really, really well-written issue. I liked it a lot. That's what I got.
All right, Mr. Colley.
Yeah, you are the third person here, so that dead air was for you to put in your thoughts.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, I really enjoyed this issue too. The thing that was most weird to me was the thing Nick mentioned earlier, where it is kind of just Harley's craziness. We don't see a lot of the Joker manipulating her early on, except I do think it may be an unreliable narrator situation where, except the thing that contradicts that is that the Joker like doesn't even seem to remember who she is. Like in the Mad Love story, there's the whole period where like he kind of manipulates and seduces her a bit while she's his doctor at Arkham, and that's when it he intentionally makes her fall for him and become his hench girl. But yeah, really well written issue. Dini's great as usual. There were a lot of fun cartoony moments. I really like the visual gag of Harley's makeshift bat symbol where she like has two like mechanical hands making a bat shadow just dangling from some pole or something. It's just the most over the top Rube Goldberg-ish way of making a thrown together bat signal. But yeah, this is probably my favorite issue out of the three. Yep.
All right. Well, if we have nothing else to add, we're about out of time.
All right.
So it is October 29th as we're recording this. Mr. Colley is already in the Halloween spirit, laying clues around the town that I'm sure someone will find and get annoyed at.
Yeah.
He's not building a giant death trap racetrack underneath Gotham City that makes no sense, and by the way, isn't a riddle.
No, that's not riddle at all, is it?
No, most of the riddles in that game are not riddles.
Not even remotely.
They're puzzles, really, and that's what Clue Master's for.
Who the fuck is Clue Master?
That is spoiler. Stephanie Brown's father.
Okay.
You'll see spoiler, I'm sure, at some point.
Okay.
Clue Master's shown up earlier in this series, like way back when.
So,
yeah, he's Steph's father. Jokes and clues and riddles are the gimmicks of three Batman villains.
All right, and with that, let's call it a night.
That sounds good.
And I gotta wait for the broadcast.